I think you're going to get a lot out of this conversation with a woman you might not already know. Her name is Catherine Hummel. She's a love expert, a love coach, and a former love addict. She's also a woman in recovery from addiction to alcohol. And we're going to go deep into her story of how she became an addict in love and in alcohol, and then how she's been able to transform her life through the work that she's done. Here we go with Catherine Hummel.
Here, we want to show you what's possible in the world of sobriety. We introduce you to the various tools, programs, and resources available, because there are way more options than you may even realize. We want you to find the one that works for you.
And we do it through people who share their pathway to recovery and will help you find your path to freedom. Because getting sober can feel hard enough. You don't have to do it alone. I'm Sarah Roberts.
And I'm Roger DeVoe, and this is Sobriety Starts Here.
I am so excited to be talking with Catherine Hummel. You are a love coach and somebody that has a lot of experience in this department. So I really wanted to sit down and talk with you, Catherine, about your products, the projects and the plans that you are working on, all of the amazing resources that you provide to people. But also I wanted to deep dive into your personal story with love addiction and relationship issues and all of that juicy stuff. So I really want to welcome you to the show. Thanks for being here.
Thank you so much. I'm so excited to have this conversation. It's my favorite thing to talk about. So
fantastic. Well, then we'll go right into it. So Catherine, I know that you have a couple of different products that you serve people with, and I know that one of them is all about self-love, and then you have another one where it's really about attracting a partner. So why don't you go ahead and let us know what are the different tools and products that you serve people with?
So my 21 Days to Lasting Self-Love is a super simple program. And I actually began my journey as a self-love and confidence coach. I have a master's in public health, and I was sitting in grad school watching how we were learning how to create all these amazing programs and policies, but people made decisions based on how they felt about themselves. And then the self-love movement took off, and I feel like everyone's talking about self-love, and most people are saying to themselves, oh yeah, well, I think, I have a nice attitude about myself. But I define self-love as being a connection to my essential self, right? So the capital S, self. And most people have a good attitude about themselves, but actually aren't connected to themselves. So the 21 Days to Lasting Self-Love program is the answer to the disconnection that so many people feel on a daily basis. And what does it mean to actually care for myself, actually accept myself? And then the core piece, I think, is self-expression, which is finding joy and playfulness and singing and dancing and laughter and real openness. That's the core reflection of self-love. So that program's do it yourself. It's a private webpage, and you can walk through the course one day at a time in a super simple and powerfully effective way.
So are we talking about having exercises that we have to do daily, mantras, meditations? What's the experience of going through that program?
A daily practice, absolutely a daily practice. So I break up self-love that it's self-care, self-acceptance, and self-expression. So each video in that program, there's 4 videos, is around that topic. And then there's a 21-day workbook that actually tells you, here's how you build self-love. Like, here's your practice for today. Because I know for me, at a certain point in my life, it was like, I don't even know what the heck that means. I sure as heck don't know how to cultivate it for myself. And then I'm on, when I'm Googling self-love, it was like 50 different ways to do this, or 100 ways to love yourself. And it was like, oh my God, and it felt really insurmountable and huge. And so I wanted to create that program so it could be so simple and really empower someone to say, oh, this is all I have to do today. And then each daily practice builds the self-love to have an amazing experience so it doesn't feel so overwhelming.
Oh, I love that. Can you give us an example of one of the exercises we might go through in that 21-day program?
Deep breathing.
Yeah.
Deep breathing. People aren't breathing. Sometimes even now when I'm driving, I'll be like, I'm holding my breath. Why am I holding my breath right now? And so waking up in the morning and taking deep breaths actually transformed my whole day. And that was one of the very first practices. Because affirmations, I mean, everyone now is talking about affirmations, and they certainly do work, but they don't work if they're not connected to the breath. So if I'm actually not having every cell in my body respond to the words that I'm saying. So we breathe when we wake up in the morning to then actually have a relationship with our thoughts, a relationship with our body, a relationship with our feelings. So I have the spaciousness to even notice when I'm connected or disconnected.
Oh my gosh, that's brilliant. Is there a technique that you teach with the deep breathing? Like, is there a way to do it that's, I know that Dr. Wheel talks about the 4, 7, 8. So breathe in for 4, hold for 7, breathe out for 8. Do you have a technique as well?
I like 4, 6. So breathing in for 4 and out for 6. But I also teach it from a perspective of bringing your hands to your body. So having your hands at your lower ribs, so you can feel your ribs expanding and contracting on the breath, or just bringing it to your lower belly, your hands right below your belly button, because most people are breathing and the breath like stops here.
Yeah.
Right? And so just bringing your hands to your body and seeing, okay, if I can feel the breath reach down to my lower belly, and all I say is doing that for 5 breaths in the morning before you get out of bed. So alarm goes off, or whenever you wake up, you sit up, hands to your lower belly, and just greeting your body, greeting the day.
I love that. So simple, so actionable. We do keep hearing self-love, and self-care, radical self-care. And I do think that a lot of people are like, what does that mean? So I love something that's simple, that's accessible, that's easy, and that's something that literally can become an automatic when you wake up in the morning. It's just the first thing you do. The first thing I like to do in the morning is just say a simple prayer. It's usually just thank you. But I like this. I'm going to start incorporating my deep breathing into my morning. I love that. The other thing that you are offering is a group coaching program. So that's called Committed to Love. Can you share a little bit about that program, who it's for, and what the experience is like?
I am so excited about this program. I just launched it this year, and it's been in my heart for probably 3 years. And one, I have found in my experience that group work truly has been the most powerful path, because witnessing other people's work, hearing other people's story is what's healing to our bodies, right? Knowing we're not alone, being accountable to a practice, and having the support of other people. And how Committed to Love is set up, the map is cultivating a relationship with the divine, then cultivating a relationship with yourself, then cultivating a relationship with your partner. And I'm sure we'll get into this when I talk about love addiction, but really, I think love addiction is just a misdirection of love. It's misplaced love. I make somebody else God. And so why Committed to Love works is because we do the spiritual work first. And I think self-love happens as a result of knowing who I belong to, right? That I'm a spiritual being having a human experience. And it became impossible for me to hate myself once I knew that I was Spirit's beloved creation, that I was created in love. So Committed to Love is a private group program where I only take 10 to 12 women at any given time. So it's not overwhelming. Nobody has to track, 30 or 40 people, that it's really, really an intimate space. And we meet twice a month, and all on Zoom, online, so we're seeing each other's faces. And then in the private Facebook group, people are making videos and posts and writing about their journey as they track the theme of each month. And why I created it for 6 months is so that people didn't have to feel like they have to cram everything in, right? It's actually, okay, trust. You begin the process of faith as soon as you sign up. Yeah. Right? I have to trust the unfolding of this process, and trust that as I keep things simple, focusing month by month, things unfold and magic unfolds. And the miracles that are occurring for the women in the program right now, it's actually blowing my mind. They're starting businesses. They're realizing they want to change where they live. They're feeling more connected to themselves than they ever have before. And we don't do the relationship work until the end, because I've found that the healing, really all we have to do is heal in order to find love. Then it just becomes a natural after effect of living from our hearts.
I totally can relate to that. It was so funny when I was reading your story and a bit of your work. It really reminded me, and I've shared this in other conversations, I believe that I manifested my partner, and it was through exactly what you're talking about. I finally fell in love with me, and I started giving myself what I needed, and I started learning what I liked, and I started really practicing radical self-care for the first time in my entire life. And in so doing, I then automatically just was attracting lots of different people, and some I had to say no thanks, and then others, like my partner Roger, it was just like this, it was like I recognized him from before, and yet we'd never met. So I fully am on board with this. I'm curious, I want to stop you for a second and ask about, what about people who don't have a connection to the divine or to God or to spirit, or we do work, I know you and I are in the recovery space, and we have people that are atheists or people that just don't believe in that. Are they also able to take your program?
They are able to take my program, and really with willingness. So I was asking the women, actually just did this. I asked all the women in Committed to Love right now, I said, what would you say who would you say this program is for? And what would you say to women who are considering it? And all of them, the very first thing they said was, someone has to be truly willing to open to these practices. And so if you come, and this is true for anybody, right? If you come in like this, right? If you're saying, oh, this person's going to do me, right? This person's going to make something happen for me. It's not going to work.
Yeah.
And I think the program is for people that are already spiritual, but it's also really designed for the people that are longing for that, right? Longing for a spiritual relationship, longing for that kind of connection. If someone's just totally atheist, like spirituality is not for me, then I'm definitely not the coach, and this wouldn't be the program for them.
Well said. Good. And sometimes that's the best, right? Knowing who are our people and who aren't, and who we're going to resonate with and who we're not. So I appreciate that. I also keep hearing you mention women only. Is this for women only?
Yes. Yes, it is for women only.
Yeah. All right. Excellent. So now what I really want to do, and for people to get in touch with you, your website is, tell us your website again.
Catherine-Hummel.com.
And it's
one L, and my playground is Facebook. I'm on Facebook. That's my home base, and I would love for people to find me there.
Fantastic. Well, we'll post those links below your video as well. So why don't we go ahead and go back into your story? I've been really excited to be able to share this, because I think a lot of people that I'm connected with have issues with their family of origin, with the way that they were raised, and a lot of stuff that comes up when later on we then develop addictions, and we can look back on what happened in childhood. And it's not as a place of being able to blame or pointing fingers, but it's a matter of being able to look back and to say, something in my childhood that led me down that path, or that took me that way, or that affected the way that I turned out. So I'm curious to hear your story, wherever you'd like to start it in childhood.
Oh man, wherever I'd like to start it. So I was born to very wounded parents, right? Who had never done any work around themselves. My father was adopted. He grew up in a home where if he behaved badly, his parents threatened to take him back to the adoption agency. They never said I love you to him. And I grew up with a mother who told herself that she was loved because her parents clothed her and gave her a home and supported her education, but was total lack of affection. And so she was very, very cold. And the dynamic for me was a mother who was emotionally, physically, and verbally abusive, and a father who essentially the children were his resource for love, right? To make him feel good about himself. And when I teach healing from childhood, the appropriate healing is parent to child, and love flows this way from parent to child. But in my childhood, it was love flows that way, right? It was my father sourcing love from us and cultivating his self-worth and his self-esteem, and very little support on having us cultivate self-worth and self-esteem and know we were valuable. I was also sexually abused from my dad's father. And my journey through that has been really powerful, because I didn't actually know that had happened to me until I began in-depth inner child work in my late 20s, where the memory started coming once I started doing that work. But what was powerful is that I never wanted to go to my grandparents' house. And I would voice that and I would say that, and my parents would make me go. And so in that moment, I think, and I like get emotional when I think about this, because the core wounding for people ends up when they're addicted and with love addiction is a lack of self-trust. And that's really how it started for me in that moment, that, oh, I can't trust what I'm feeling or what I'm needing. I actually have to trust that other people know what's best for me and I don't. And just forever, never wanted to be around my grandfather. And it was only in deep, intense inner child therapy where it was like, I had the memory flash of exactly what had happened.
So I'm curious only because I'm just interested. How old were you when you were first abused by your grandfather?
It was between the ages of 2 and 4. So it was before I went to school. My parents would bring me to my grandparents' house for daycare and childcare before going to school.
Oh my goodness. And so you just really didn't have the language or the ability to process it. So you compartmentalized it, and then it didn't come out later until you entered trauma therapy.
Yes.
Incredible. Okay. I'm so sorry that happened to you.
Thank you.
Really.
I'm so proud of the work I've done to heal and recover from it, because it no longer has such a hold on me, and it really did for a very long time. And then of course, acted out sexually all through my teen years and early 20s.
Okay, so walk us through then. So you've told your parents that you don't want to go to your grandparents' place. They don't listen. They keep sending you there. Now you go to school. Like, keep walking us through your childhood and if there are any other sort of defining moments.
I was so angry. And 8, 9, 10, 11 years old, screaming at my sisters, and my parents are hitting me. I'm hitting my younger sister. So I'm the oldest of 3 girls. And there were times when my dad would say to me, my father would look at me and say, when you hurt them, you're hurting me. And I remember not having the language for this at 10, 11 years old, but being like, well, then what am I to you? Aren't I your daughter too? I'm hurting too. And just so much acting out. And I was totally the problem child, right? The scapegoat of my family, which many addicts end up being, right? We're called the lost children.
Yeah. Because
the message was, you're bad and your sisters are good, and I love your sisters and I don't love you. And I was really mean. I was so mean, and I would, really, and this is so painful for me when I think about actually how mean I was to other kids at school, because I just was hurting so much. And I was made fun of too, but I all I could do to protect myself and not fall apart when I went to school or when I went home was to try to be the bully and the strong one.
It really makes us mindful that when a child is a bully, there are usually other things going on, and we can't just point to the behavior. We have to look at what's underlying it.
Absolutely. And my whole body was screaming for help and attention, and everyone just kept looking at me like a problem. My parents even sent me to therapy at 12 because it was she's a problem. And, that's the family systems work. No child is born into that kind of angst and anger and upset. And
what happened in therapy? Were you able to be honest or no?
I don't even remember.
Yeah.
I don't even remember it at that age. All I know is I couldn't wait to get out of my house, and I went to college in DC because I couldn't get out fast enough.
Christy Coulter, I interviewed her a little while ago, had a similar experience. Her family sent her into, therapy to figure out why she was so depressed. She's like, why do you think I'm so depressed? You guys are messing me up. I mean, it was, a rough childhood for her as well. You mentioned on your blog or on something that I read about you, your parents fought a lot in front of you. So they did not have a healthy relationship themselves. So they were really not able to model for you what a loving, healthy relationship looked like.
Not at all. I actually watched my mom sometimes like go to kiss my father goodbye and he would turn his face away. And when they would fight, my dad would always leave, right? So I'd hear them fighting and then I'd hear the door slam and then have to wonder if my dad was ever going to come back, right? So that kind of behavior and upset, like watching people just be so angry, not even, they weren't being loving toward me. So, I was like so desperate for like looking for where love is because it's not anywhere here. And I also share in my story that what saved my life during that time were love songs. That I had this little radio and I would listen to love songs at night. This does make me cry every time because that, like when I teach people about love, like our bodies know, right? Like even though that was happening to me, there was a part of me that knew like this can't be it. Like this can't be how I'm supposed to live my life. And then if these people can sing these love songs, right, then this must be what's real. And the station I listened to was people dedicating songs, like not just for romance, like it was mothers dedicating songs to their sons. It was, dedicating songs to uncles and aunts and friends. And so it was feeling this thread of love that didn't only have to do with romantic partnership. And that kept me alive. Those years, like that kept me from running away, that kept me from, I wasn't a child that ended up cutting herself or hurting herself, and I really think it was love songs, and I was an athlete. So I did have really a good community in elementary school, junior high, high school. Like I was a superstar on the track team, and that is what saved my life too, because I had people who loved me and I was celebrated in some way because I was a really good athlete.
Wow. And I have to ask you, so what are your parents saying to you when you're this really good athlete and you're not a bad kid? I mean, what are they saying during that time? Is there any love towards you at all?
I felt loved when they came to the meets. I felt loved when they paid for the gym membership so I could work out. But what is interesting, and I've had these conversations with them, is they said to me, we told ourselves you were okay because you had friends and because you got good grades and because you were an athlete, right? So this unbelievable denial, my mother is a little bit narcissistic. I don't like using that word. I know that there are some diagnoses of that, but her narcissism looked like not being able to have empathy for what it might have been like for us as teenage girls, right? So she tells herself, well, I fed you and I clothed you and you had shelter, so isn't that enough?
Yeah.
Right? There was no emotional nurturance and no emotional support and connection and no what I call attunement, right? So somebody being able to say, like, I can read your body, right? Emotionally, I can tune into saying, oh, you might not be okay. And I started drinking when I was 16.
So that was your first time taking a drug?
Yeah.
Yeah. Can you tell us about that experience, that first time?
Well, it's perfect because I started drinking because a super hot 18-year-old boy offered it to me. Like the drug was more about getting the attention from this man. And, he offered the drink, and all I remember from that night is him saying, you drink really fast. And I don't even remember tasting it. All I remember is the immediate euphoria, or, the immediate also numb. Like I disappeared into myself, and this person was taking care of me. Like there he was, it was just he and I at his house. I was a sophomore in high school, he was a senior, and he was on the track team, and I just felt on top of the world. Like I felt wanted and desired and alive, and how could it possibly be any better than that?
So what ended up happening in that relationship, and then of course with your alcohol use?
Well, in high school, I only drank on the weekends because of being an athlete, and I just like didn't have access to the alcohol unless I was hanging out with the older people. I definitely stole it from my parents and would put it in water bottles and fill the vodka back up with water. My parents didn't drink that much, and so it's funny, they actually like never really noticed. But I was, what do you call it, the weekend warrior. That, Saturdays were track meets, and then we'd all go out and drink on Saturday nights. And I very quickly realized how I could get it, like that I could get attention by being this loud, obnoxious person who took her clothes off at every party. And, I really like said to myself, why have one boyfriend when you could have 10? Like, I didn't need just one, and I didn't really only want one person's attention. Like, I wanted everybody's attention.
Like guys, girls, like not just sexual,
guys.
Also male sexual
guys, male sexual attention. Yeah, and to be desired. I didn't have boyfriends. I just kind of fooled around with everybody and drank with everybody. And later I was able to have conversations with some of those guys, and they were like, you just gave off, like, even if one of us liked you and like would have wanted to be close to you, we knew that that's just not what Kathryn did. Like, that wasn't, Kathryn's wiring. And then my first boyfriend was as a junior in high school, and that only lasted a year. He cheated on me, and then again, like, didn't have relationships again for several years because the attention was enough. Right. And even when that boyfriend broke up with me, actually, I ended up saying to him, well, will you just keep having sex with me? Like, all, like, the closeness, like any attention at all, right, was my drug.
Oh, it makes me feel like, any scraps that are available on the ground, like I'll just take anything.
For sure.
Yeah. And I totally can relate to that, being, I was a promiscuous teenager myself. So, okay. So keep going with your story. I want to keep going.
So that, that high school boyfriend totally broke my heart, and I ended up then going to college and really was anti-relationship in college. But then I just slept with everybody. And I did go to college on a track scholarship, but I stopped running after a year and a half because the drinking was just taking over, and I couldn't be a Division I athlete and drank the way that I was drinking. And the spiraling out happened, not super fast, but fast enough. Like, each year of college just kept getting worse and worse and worse, of just not being able to function and feeling so lost and so desperate. And my mom would say to me that when I would talk to her, all I would talk about is like the excitement around alcohol, like being able to go to parties and planning my friends' parties where I'd plan like 5 different types of shots on every single person's plate, right? When we would go out to dinner, like, my whole life was around alcohol and making sure that I had many, many, many male attention, like people to choose from. Like, I would never really, and it's so interesting as I get to my, the person I was love addicted to, but my love addiction, functioned more as sex addiction in college, because it was, I just needed any attention at all to be functional and to be able to be, stable, really.
How do you define the difference between love addiction and sex addiction?
So sex addiction is the need for the actual physical act of sex, whereas love addiction ends up being, I'm addicted to the intensity cycle, which usually functions around one particular person. Whereas sex addiction doesn't really matter who I'm having sex with, right? Love addiction and sex addiction can go together when it's a need to be having sex with one particular person. But for me, love addiction ended up looking like the intensity of needing one person.
Okay. So up until this point in college, you really haven't had any long-term serious relationships yet?
No, other than the high school boyfriend. And then I was a junior in college by the time I had a boyfriend again. So that, 3 years of not being connected to anybody. And so let's see, I'm 20 years old, and I met a guy at a concert who told me he was 26, but he ended up being 30. So he lied about his age, but that began the attachment to one particular person because he was older and the desperation of needing him to take care of me. And it was, just not good. it was not good. I was so needy and desperate all of the time. Everything was about me. I was able to make amends to that person several years later, and he literally looked at me and said, "You were the most selfish person I have ever met in my entire life."
Wow.
And if you asked me anything about him, like what's his favorite color, what's his like favorite thing to do, I literally wouldn't be able to answer because everything was about me. Like my needs, taking care of me, making sure I was okay, sleeping with me when I wanted him to sleep with me, spending time with me when I wanted him to sleep with me. And before my husband, I never had any relationships last longer than 9 months.
And it's funny, as you're talking, I'm sitting here thinking, but self-love can tend for, I think, for a lot of people, we kind of can look at it and think, oh my gosh, I can't focus on myself that much. I want to focus on others. Where do we draw that line between it being self-love and self-care versus selfish?
So self-care is responding to what I need. That when someone loves themselves, they're responsive to what they need. And then in a healthy relationship, I'm able to hold the needs of another person too. So self-love is my needs and your needs matter. Selfishness is only my needs matter. Martyrdom is your needs matter and mine don't.
Mm-hmm.
So I also don't believe that self-love can happen in isolation, that I learned how to love myself not only by doing my own personal practices, but letting other people love me.
Mm-hmm.
And this college boyfriend was unbelievably critical, that he would, make fun of me all the time. He'd make really negative comments. And so even though he was physically like doing things for me, and spending time with me, I didn't really have any kind of emotional intimacy with this person. And one of the stories I often tell is I was in his apartment and we're getting ready to go out, and I walked into the bathroom and I made a disgusted noise looking at myself in the mirror, like, just like I couldn't stand myself. And I can still see him. He comes over and like leans on the, doorway and says, "What's that like?" And I was like, "What's what like?" And he's like, "Hating yourself that much. Being disgusted by yourself."
Wow. Oh my gosh. I just can't. I've had moments like that where I have been disgusted with myself, but I don't believe they've ever been witnessed in that way. I can remember one memory as a child. Actually, as you're saying it, I was hitting myself on the head with my hairbrush because I hated my hair. I was so mad at my hair and I just hated everything. I was so angry and I thought I was alone in the house. And my father just kind of called upstairs, "That's enough." And I was like, oh shit. Like he caught me. And I think I ran to my room and it was never discussed, but that just brought that up for me. But I just can only imagine how that must've felt for you, that feeling of him witnessing that.
Yeah. And I really only had 3 major relationships before my core love addicted relationship. And all 3 of those boyfriends broke up with me by saying, "I just don't love you anymore." Mm. So I already had an inherent sense of not being lovable, not being worthy, not being enough. And so if I had a boyfriend, I was able to hold on to that imagination for 1 second, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, oh, I must be lovable and worthy because this person likes me.
Yeah.
But when they would say, "I just don't love you anymore," I was left with well, how could this, then what do I do? Because everything about relationship was all around what do I do? What do I do to keep it? What do I do to make it happen? And I just had lots of big, periods of being single because the heartbreak would kill me.
Mm-hmm.
It would destroy me. And I would go through, I was already acting out. So each time the high school heartbreak happened, the college heartbreak happened, I spiraled out because it would just be I think I slept with one person a day for a different person a day for 2 weeks through every breakup, drinking all day long, not being able to function. I'm going to die. right, without this person.
Mm-hmm. What are your friends saying when you're going through these breakups
Oh,
and all this?
man. They were so helpless. They were so helpless. And God blessed me with some really amazing girlfriends, but nobody knew what to say.
Mm-hmm.
Nobody knew what to do. And I got sober the summer after college. I graduated from college May 9th, 2009. My sobriety date is July 1st, 2009. And I got sober because my best friend at the time, I was living with her, and my birthday is July 6th. And on July 1st, I came downstairs and she was sitting at the kitchen table and it was dark out. And I said, we haven't made plans for my birthday. You know, it's on Friday. Like, what are we gonna do? And she looked down and then looked up at me and said, I don't want to spend time with you. I don't want to spend time with you anymore. You are scaring me with how much you're drinking. And then she said, and most importantly, the way you let men treat you is disgusting. And when I'm around you with them, they think they can treat me that way too. And that's not okay for me. And for whatever reason, I didn't drink that night. And I did go to I went to AA the next day because when I was 19, I had an intervention with my parents. I was home for Thanksgiving. I had been out at a party and I puked all over the hallway of my parents' house, and my sisters heard, I was making all this noise and my sisters heard me. So then my little sisters woke up and saw me puking, projectile vomiting all over the hallway of my house, and total no recollection of it at all. And so when I woke up the next morning, my mom, ended up saying to me, are you okay? And for the first time in my life, I said no. So when that was when I was 19, and I ended up finding a therapist in Washington, D.C., where I went to college. And after 2 visits with that person, she suggested AA. She talked to me about drinking, and I wasn't drunk when I went to therapy. I was just talking. And she suggested AA.
So this is when you're 19 and your mother is that, she really is mothering you at that time, trying to help guide you. And then you went to see this therapist. You went to AA, but did it just...
I did not go.
Oh, you didn't go.
At 19, right? So she made that comment, and I essentially was like, listen, lady, we're not talking about my drinking. I'll keep you busy with my childhood. Do not talk to me about my drinking. And that woman never brought it up again. And I wrote her a letter when I was 6 months sober, because the fact that she had said it to me when I was 19, so now I'm 21 with my friends, after college, and I remembered that she had said that, right? I remember that there might be a place for someone like me. And I went to my first AA meeting on July 2nd, 2009, and never had a drink again.
Amazing. You've never relapsed.
No, but I have been, addicted to peanut M&Ms and sex and working out and spending money and one particular person, so it is huge that I haven't had a drink, but I definitely, it took a long time for me to heal, a long time.
And so is AA a tool in your toolbox now still?
Yes. Yes, it is. And I am very grateful I got sober in a city. I got sober in Boston, and, walking into an AA meeting, there were people who looked like me, right? There are people who were successful and living, full lives. And, I met some of my most amazing best friends, from AA, and I found personal development at 2.5 years sober, and then found yoga and meditation and coach, and just that was the expansion of my life. But I met my I don't even know what you would call it, like the person I was addicted to at 2 years sober.
At 2 years sober. In AA as well?
No, at the gym.
Yeah.
He walked into the gym, and like the good love addict that I was obsessed with his charisma and power and the immediate projection of he had all the light qualities, right, that I didn't. Because a lot of people, when they talk about shadow work, they think it just means darkness. But for the love addicts, the shadow component actually is light, right? Is being enough, being powerful, being beautiful, being wonderful, right? And having the qualities of being loving and compassionate. That's what's disowned in the love addict. And so we attach to people that we imagine have those qualities, and then that's the pedestal that they get put on, and then I'm only good enough and worthy and lovable because you want me. So I was on again and off again with that person for 3.5 years.
So that takes you from the ages of 21 to 24?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So tell us a little bit about that relationship. What does it look like? What does it feel like? And what's his contribution as well?
Oh, what it felt like was a consistent drama of highs and lows, right? Of intensity and excitement, and then falling apart and like, I'm gonna die without this person. And the expansion and contraction and the obsession and compulsion and the need and desperation for him to be around. And of course, nothing is ever good enough for the love addict. The love addict's always wanting more text messages, more calls, more time together. And of course, love addicts only attract people that are love avoidant. And so the more the love addict wants, the more withdrawn the love addict or the love avoidant becomes. And so when I think of why the breathing exercises are the self-love path, is because when you're with the right person, you can breathe. And your body's relaxed and soft, your nervous system, right, is peaceful. And with my ex, I could never breathe. Like everything was holding my breath, and then he'd respond to me or hang out with me, and I'd take a big breath, and then I'd go underwater again. And that's the love addict cycle.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. And it feels just like any other addiction, right? Like I really see those similarities. Is the perfect counterpart to a love addict a narcissist?
Not necessarily. I mean, I don't know if I'd call it the narcissist. It's more the perfect counterpart for the love addict is the love avoidant. Okay. And what's happening in that cycle is the love addict has a conscious fear of abandonment, right? Like that's what's driving the love addicts, right? I need to feel connected to someone. I need to go close to someone. Don't leave me.
Yeah.
The conscious fear of the love avoidant is intimacy, which is don't get close to me. Like I'm going to be swallowed whole by you. Yeah. But if that's the conscious driver, right? Love addict is afraid of abandonment. Love avoidant is afraid of intimacy. What's unconscious in both of them is the opposite. So even though I'm telling myself I want to be close to my partner, I'm also afraid of intimacy. The love avoidant is telling himself or herself that they don't want to be swallowed whole, but their unconscious fear is abandonment. So that's the infinity symbol of both of those patterns. And so he would break up with me, right, when it would become too intense. Then we'd have a week or two apart, and then his abandonment fear would kick in, and then he'd come back. He always came back. And that was the cycle, right, that we were in. And I remember feeling, out of my mind, like wanting to rip my skin off, right, and wanting to kill myself on the times when he would break up with me, and not having any reason to live, right? Unless this person was in my life. And that cycle of I can't breathe, I can't breathe, I can't breathe. I get a big breath as I lift my head up over the water. And then I can't breathe, I can't breathe, I can't breathe.
So tell us then, how did you escape this cycle? What happened? And first of all, is he the man that you broke up with 10 times and you kept going?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. 3.5 years of breaking up, getting back together, breaking up, getting back together, breaking up, getting back together.
Oh my gosh. Okay. So keep walking us forward in this story.
So
like, how do you get out of how do you finally actually end this relationship?
My friends, again, and this is probably true for anybody who's having this intensity of a cycle. Like, a lot of love addicts don't call themselves love addicts. Like, they just know they're in this intensity of a cycle. And I don't market myself saying like I'm someone who works with love addicts, but the people that end up finding me are, of course, love addicts and codependents. I ended up meeting a woman who was carrying herself and talking about her romantic relationship in a way that I had just never, ever heard it before. And I ended up asking her, like, what have you done? Because she was in recovery too. And she said inner child therapy. And she told me about this woman in Boston that she had been working with. And I called this woman. And I remember walking into her office and just talking about, what was going on. And she told me she could help me. And later she told me that I was like a leaf blowing in the wind, that I was so fragile that I was like a dead leaf with cracks and holes in it that just had no sense of self. And that's really what defines the love addict, right? I don't know who I am, right? Codependency, the disease of the lost self. And love addiction is a symptom of codependency, right? So all love addicts are codependent, right? At the core. So that's where the healing begins. And when I think of what is required, and I was still with my ex, right, at that time. And so some people, it isn't that I have to go cold turkey in order to heal, because that couldn't happen. I couldn't stop. Mm-hmm. And so the healing began, right, while still in the cycle with him, mm-hmm. And I have so much compassion when people come to me, because I don't tell them you have to break up with him, right, in order to heal, because the love addicts, I can't, right, like I couldn't, right, but I could begin the healing process. And gosh, I saw this woman twice a week.
Wow. And
we did inner child work from the place of recognizing that I had an inner child. And my job was to reparent that inner child. And my job was to feel the grief of not having the childhood that I was never going to have. Because that's all people are trying to do in romantic partnership, right? Recreate the childhood that they didn't have. And the only way through is to grieve what you didn't have and what you will never have. Yeah. And for me, in that grief is where I found God. Mm. And like I said, with the Committed to Love program, the clients that work with me, like, I'm not the coach for you if you don't want spirituality. Mm-hmm. And I personally really stand by no love addict can heal without spirituality. That is what set me free. Specifically the Course in Miracles, which I do believe I'm now a student and teacher of, mm-hmm. but inner child work plus spirituality, and getting that we don't ever heal the inner child. We will forever have a wounded inner child, but we do cultivate the healthy parent inside, and that's where the healing begins. The healthy parent partners with the inner child, and then the goddess, right, the God, the empowered self is then who partners with someone else. Mm-hmm.
Can I ask you, as you're going through all of this work and this healing that you're going through, are you telling your parents, your actual parents, that you are doing this work and that you've been struggling and that this is not coming up in conversation?
What I ended up doing was telling them that I was beginning an in-depth healing process, and I didn't want to talk to them for a while. Because with when someone's going through that healing, I learned that who I'm actually upset about and having reactions to are my parents from when I was 2 to 10, right? So by not talking to them, I could actually deal with the parent, right, that I was truly mad at and upset at, and having all this projection around. And, you know, I think the healing becomes when I stop. I mean, I call my parents Anna and David today. You know, I don't think I have this like amazing, you know, healing relationship, you know, healed relationship with my parents now, but I can see my parents for who they are now, not as what I wish they were, and not punishing them for what they are, right? Just for the people that they are. And my childhood shaped me into being the relationship coach and healer that I get to be today. So you know you've done the healing work when there's just no more angst and upset. And that is where love addiction and spiritual recovery took me with my ex. That I did have a white light experience. Obviously I don't make that happen for my clients, but they have their own path of recovery when they find spirit in themselves. But when you can look at your ex without any charge.
So clearly he became an ex. So you ended that relationship. Can you share with us how that relationship ended up ending?
Oh man. Our final break, so God did for me what I couldn't do for myself, which is that, you know, we were in Boston together and he got a job in San Diego. He was from San Diego, so he went back to San Diego. And honestly, if he hadn't gone all the way across the country, like, I don't know if I would have been able to stop. But I was deeply committed to the inner child work, and I was working with the Course in Miracles teacher, and he started dating the roommate of my best friend in San Diego. And I don't remember, I don't remember who says this, but there's a quote: betrayal is the midwife of salvation. And him dating that person actually ended up being really, really important for my healing, because it was like the break of the fantasy and imagination of us ever being together again. And it took me into a depth that I just wasn't able to go to ever before. And my first spiritual experience was when it was now, you know, he had moved back. This is maybe 5 months later, and I can't function. You know, like, I'm barely showing up for work. I am coaching at that time, right? So I feel like a fraud all the time because I'm helping people love themselves, but I'm struggling with this so deeply. And I'm, you know, sitting in my room, and my room's disgusting and, you know, so messy, and I hadn't been eating. And all of a sudden I hear this voice that says, he's not in your life anymore, but he's your whole life. And I really, in that moment, I could hear it, and I woke up and was like, wait, right, he's not in my life anymore, and I'm obsessed with him. He's all I'm thinking about, and I actually have all these amazing things to be doing and to feel proud of. And so I threw myself into my business, and that immediate shift of starting to really bring my attention back to myself is then how I was able to take off. And did a lot of yoga and did a lot of energy work, and really threw myself into being of service to other people. And I hired a relationship coach of my own at that time and said, you know, I want to totally get over love addiction and learn how to find, you know, a new partner.
And so can you share with us, how did you find your husband?
So I don't like using the word manifestation for partnership. For me, the healing, and I find for love addicts and codependents, the healing is actually around being able to receive. So I believe the desire for partnership is pure, that the moment you desire partnership, that desire has been placed by God. So therefore it's meant for you. Like, if you have a longing to be partnered, right, it's meant for you, and it's going to come true. And what ended up, once I truly ended it, you know, and we ended in November of 2013 and agreed, my ex and I, and we agreed to not talk for a while. Like we just were like, we just can't talk. Like we agreed to not call each other, to not text, because like I said, he would always come back, right? He'd be talking to me even while he had the new girlfriend, because he was just as, you know, the people in the love addicted relationship are both equally, right, obsessed and compulsive and connected. And so we agreed to not talk. And then I started getting super, you know, committed to working with a relationship coach and learning about love addiction, and then developing my relationship with God through the Course in Miracles. And in May of 2014, I went to Hawaii for a month, and I actually saw my ex, because I flew to San Diego before I flew to Hawaii, and I saw my ex. And I remember sitting across, I mean, he wanted to get back together again. And he broke up with the girlfriend that he was with in order to see me that day before I went to Hawaii. And I was sitting with him, and, you know, it's like kind of that white light when people talk about recovering from alcohol abuse, right? Like that I just didn't want the desire for alcohol anymore. I was sitting across the table from him, and the desire for him was gone. And that was through inner child work, relationship coaching, energy work, and the Course in Miracles. And I literally was able to say to him, no, like, I don't want you. I don't want this. And the projection, right, the screen had been lifted and I could see him clearly. And I then went to Hawaii and had the most amazing experience of my entire life. And while in Hawaii, I remember feeling that my partner was coming. And on my ex and I broke up November of 2013. On January 1st of 2014, I said to God, I'm done with pain and struggle. Like, I want the partner that you have planned for me, right? And I will do what you need me to do to be ready for this person, to receive this person, and to be the best partner I can be for this person. So on January of 1st of 2014, I said that. Went to Hawaii, went on a retreat, spent 3 weeks there, came back. And at the end of May, May 29th or something, I signed on to Match.com. Andrew sent me a message on June 3rd. We met on June 11th for the first time, and the rest is history.
Wow. That is amazing. What a beautiful story. What a beautiful way to end the story that is now just beginning. Your whole life is now ahead of you, and you don't have to deal with being grappled with addiction. I think that's what's so important about these conversations, is that no matter how it manifests in our lives, no matter how it shows up in our lives, addiction is all the same. And I think that if we can really get to the root cause of it and really go within and to go deep in whatever way that works, if it's therapy, trauma therapy, yoga, meditation, like whatever tools we use, I think it's the work of our lives is uncovering that and bringing it out and looking at it and healing it. And then I love the Joseph Campbell story of, then taking your message and helping other people to go and live better lives because of what you've been through. It's amazing. Congratulations on all of the work that you've done on yourself and that you continue to help other people with. It's beautiful work.
Thank you. The day I knew I was in love with Andrew on like our 8th date, and we were sitting on the beach, and I had a oneness experience, touching our foreheads together. And I heard God say in that moment, I want you to now help other women feel this, like this peace and passion and purpose. And it's what gets me up in the morning. Like, Andrew is so loving and so devoted and so present, and I believe it's God's love, like, moving through us into the heart of our partner, and then vice versa. And love addiction, I believe, to the women that are meant for me are the people that are in pain, like the people that feel so helpless around relationship and yet have so much longing, like that no, partnership is amazing, that no, it's transformational and healing and brings us to God when we have the right person. Like, it creates health, like people who are loved well are moving through the world with better health, right, and energy. I worked with a couple on Sunday, like really had been struggling, and I did an 8-hour intensive with them. So I do work with couples. That's where my business is going, adding that training. And I talked to the woman today after just 5 days, and she's crying, saying, I haven't felt this connected to him in a long time. He's having the best week he's ever had at work. We're laughing, right? Like, love is what we're made of. It's why we're here. And, I ended up saying to her, like, he's having the best week at work because he's healthy at home, right? Because at home, like, our relationships are the ground we stand on to then have the lives that we're meant to have. I had the best year of my business, right, in 2015, like, after being with Andrew for 6 months, like, the best year of my business. Like, I get to be, the partnership is where I go to become all that I am meant to be.
Yes. And I mean, it's not to say that that single life isn't fabulous. It can be wonderful. And for me, I spent 3.5 years single as the time that it was like that, such a breeding ground for me to really be able to explore and express myself and learn about me. But there's nothing like being in a relationship to fully express who we really are and to learn who we really are and to show who we really are. And if we believe that we are love, there is no better way or place to express it than within a relationship. I'm wondering, you mentioned about working with couples. Do you work with people who are both love addicts and they can heal together to then be able to stay together?
Yes.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Amazing.
Most of the time, if the woman's coming to me from a love addict relationship, she ends up leaving it. But what I've seen with couples is people they've been together, right, for a long time. Like, the relationship is committed, they're married, right? And the woman wants healing, right? I want to do my work so that I can get out of this, cycle. And
where he's not giving enough, or he's not emotionally available enough, and she craves it more. And
right. Right.
Yeah.
It's amazing what love does. It's amazing what love does. And I get to love people all day long. It's the best. And you can, my relationship coach saved my life. So I take very seriously what I get to do for people and how sacred the work is and how vulnerable and sacred sharing about our relationship, work is. And what was so helpful from her and what I get to say to people is, like, there actually is a path out. Like, it's not esoteric, right? It's not hoping and wishing, right? To heal from love addiction and codependency, there actually is a path, right? Of step by step, what you can do. And most importantly, I wouldn't be healed without spirituality, right? Without actually having a higher power so that my partner doesn't have to become that. Without knowing my essential self as loved and lovable and enough, right? So then that's what I bring to my partner, rather than prove to me that I'm lovable, prove to me that I need something, prove to me that I have value and worth.
Yes.
Because that's the selfishness, right? The worst part of self-hatred is it's all about me.
Yeah.
Self-hatred is egocentric. When you hate yourself, you're not helping the other person. You're not loving the other person.
So can you share with us, just like you did with the 21-day program that you offer, what would be a really early exercise that you would do either with an individual or a couple that are struggling with love addiction and codependency?
So with an individual, when someone comes to me, the first teaching is actually to show them what I shared earlier, that map of conscious fear of abandonment, unconscious fear of intimacy. And a fear of intimacy is what I'm going to feel when someone's close to me, right? I'll actually have to open and believe that I'm lovable. So when someone's afraid of intimacy, what's actually happening, and this is true for love addicts, they're saying, I'm not enough. Right? I'm not enough. And so the first exercise really is on making a list of what you're carrying that you don't think is lovable about you. And then being able to say, even though blank, 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 I am lovable.
Mm-hmm.
Because the healing starts there, that I am loved and I am lovable.
Mm-hmm.
And with a couple, what creates disconnection is a lack of repair. So for this particular couple, they had and were carrying so much hurt from each other. And so what I found in relationship, it's all these things that are left unsaid and unspoken. And so what I did for them was to have them make a list of all of the times that they have been hurt by their partner, and then have a willingness to be able to speak that and apologize for the way that they've hurt their partner. And I was like bawling my eyes out with them because they were so beautiful. They were so beautiful and totally showed up for it.
It makes me feel like that's a really important exercise for us to do if we don't go and see a trauma therapist, a child trauma therapist. That would be something like an exercise I think that would be important to do, to go back into childhood and to think about those defining moments as well.
Right. And have compassion and empathy, right? You know, I work with people between 3 and 6 months, you know, and it took me 3 years to heal from love addiction and codependency, you know, so it is like bad news. This takes time. Like it takes time to unlearn these patterns, but in childhood, we have to grieve, you know, the hurt, and then be able to hold our parents accountable from a place of saying, it isn't okay that happened to me. And it's my responsibility now to do the healing work around it. Right? Because I can't change it. And I read, so one of my favorite authors is David Rico. His work has changed my life. He's a Buddhist practitioner, psychotherapist, and author. And I actually wrote it down so I could be able to say it today. He said, addiction is seeking that which is beyond change. Seeking that which is beyond change. So what I'm doing when I'm a love addict is trying to change the person I'm in relationship with, trying to change the childhood that I had, trying to change what I can't stand right inside of me. So acceptance, right? Being able to accept the childhood that I had, and then know the skills and the tools of what it takes to actually create a healthy romantic partnership rather than the fantasy one that the love addict creates, is where the healing is.
I think a lot of people think that when we heal, and when we heal past relationships, it means that then we now have this wonderful, great relationship with these people, or that we should be able to change that relationship. Like, I'm wondering, I think that there are probably lots of cases where after the childhood trauma is acknowledged and worked through and healed, that a lot of times these healthy boundaries need to be created. And for some people, there needs to be no more relationship with parents. How do you feel about that?
It's so circumstantial, you know, like I made a comment to someone the other day that looking up dating advice on Google is the same thing as looking up symptoms on WebMD.
Yeah.
Like I can't stress enough, right, the importance of having somebody, whether it's a therapist or a coach, to be able to figure out what's my soul story, right? What do I need? What's possible for me? And it absolutely, my parents, you know, aren't emotionally, verbally, or physically abusive today, right? It is possible for me to be in relationship with them, and in relationship with them from a place of acceptance of who they are, right? I know exactly what they have to give and exactly what they're capable of, rather than spending all this time trying to change them.
Yeah.
Right? And for some clients, oh, go ahead.
No, I was just going to ask, did you ever expect or want or get an apology from your parents, or is that not part of it?
It is not part of it. Gosh, I don't remember how old I was. But after I had begun the inner child work, I was home. I'm from Albany, New York. And my parents were talking about going to visit my grandfather in the nursing home. And I sat at the kitchen table and I said, I don't want to go, right? So now I'm 22 or 23. And my dad looked at me and said, why? And I said, Dad, he abused me when I was little. And my dad turned his whole body around to actually face me and said, you don't have to go. And that was healing in and of itself. That was bigger than an apology. You don't have to go. And I never saw my grandfather again. And then he, died maybe 2 years after that. My mother has there's words, I'm sorry, right? And then there's the real empathy of I really understand, right, what I have done. So my mom has said, I'm sorry, but it's not from, her heart. And I'm okay with that today, the seeking that which is beyond change, right? When someone really heals, they stop banging their head up against the wall, right? That they accept the givens of life and relationship, and that they understand the difference between what's healthy and unhealthy expectations in relationship. And unhealthy expectation of a love addict is to want positive regard from their partner at all times. That's not going to happen, right? You don't go to relationship for need fulfillment, right? You have to be able to stand when there's a day that partner has nothing to give. My husband's actually been really sick the past 2 years, and I have learned what love is, right? Because of that when he has a rare nerve disorder, when he has a migraine, when he can't think, when his body can't function, right? To be able to love him and be present for him and show up for him. Because relationship isn't 50-50, it's not 100-100, right? Some days it's 100-0, some days it's 99-1, right? But in a healthy relationship, the energy will keep shifting, right? And it'll keep flowing. And being able to be with what is love. Being able to face reality for what it is and have the spiritual experience of the healing that occurs when we accept reality for what it is on any given day. The reality that life is both beautiful and tragic, right? That there's magical moments and then there's really tough things, that people go through together. And I care about creating a world of conscious lovers, right? Of women who can withstand, the truth of life, right? And find their power and find their purpose and find themselves as channels of love for everyone that's around them.
You are a beautiful lover and somebody I feel incredibly happy and just joyful to have met. Thank you so much for your time today. Thank you for sharing with us. I think anybody that gets the opportunity to work with you is truly working with someone who's coming at it, not from a place of do this because this is, what I did, but it's just truly you have experience in this stuff. You are still working through some of this stuff. And I sometimes find that coaches are always trying to act and behave as if they are so far away from who we are as the people that need the help. And it's you're just someone who's very clearly compassionate and truly understanding what it feels like to be there, because you're still there. You've been there, you've come through, but you're also going through. And it's really beautiful. You've mentioned a few of your tools that you use. I often ask this of people in recovery. You've talked about yoga, meditation, obviously therapy. Are there any other tools in your toolbox that you would say to people, if you can sort of adopt this into your daily practice, the breathing, that it really, really helps? Is there anything else you'd like to share?
I guess I'd talk about the impact of energy work, not necessarily a personal tool, like something you can do for yourself, but to get energy work done, Reiki or any kind of healing. I did a breath work practice for a year over the course of my recovery. And the gift of energy work is that it doesn't require my will and effort right, to receive. And so that's again why spirituality is just so amazing. But that would be another, offering that I'd say, that if you find someone in your community, right, that you receive from, right, because it's touch, right, it's opening your heart to receive, which I think is the core practice of finding partnership. I don't teach manifestation. I teach you set yourself up to be a channel to receive. And the ability that, especially when it's really hard, because it is intense work, right, to show up to someone where you get to just lay on the table and they do their work, right, to help you clear, right, that's been a really healing and powerful, and I still get done once a month, important practice for me. And in terms of a personal practice, yoga and movement really is it. You can do that at home on YouTube, putting your favorite song on, dancing, right, moving your body, right, coming home to your body, right? That's why the breath is so important, especially for women. Our power, right? Our power is here.
Yeah, I love that. Coming home to your breath. We this is it. This is the love right here.
Right here. Right here, right now.
I borrow a question from Oprah. Kathryn, what do you know for sure?
That love is real. That love is real, and why we're here.
Beautiful. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you.
And bringing your love here today. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
To get access to all of the free videos and interviews, visit sobrietystartshere.com.